James had always considered himself a patient man, a man who could weather any storm. But that night, as he stood silently in the shadows, his world crumbled before him. It was supposed to be an ordinary evening, a party Emma had dragged him to. He had no desire to be there, but he came because she wanted him to. He watched from afar as Emma, glowing with her usual charisma, mingled with the crowd, laughing, talking, effortlessly charming everyone around her. But something inside James told him something was off. He tried calling her a few times, but the calls went unanswered. His gut twisted with a rising sense of unease. After a while, he couldn't stand it anymore. He stepped outside for some air, hoping to clear his head, but instead he walked right into the nightmare that would shatter everything he thought he knew about his wife. From the corner of his eye, he saw the flickering lights of the hot tub, and for a moment he thought nothing of it. But when he looked closer, his heart skipped a beat. There, in the bubbling water, was Emma. And she wasn't alone. She was topless, her body pressed against another man, laughing, touching him, her back arched as she straddled him. It took James a moment to even register what he was seeing. His thoughts became a blur. He couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. The man beside her was Liam, a man who had been at the party all night, someone he didn't know well but never thought much of. His phone was already in his hand, instinctively recording the moment, as if he was hoping it would somehow make sense. But it didn't. It couldn't. Every part of him wanted to look away, to pretend he hadn't seen this, but he couldn't move. He couldn't tear his eyes away from the woman he had loved, the woman who had promised him everything. 6 years of marriage, 6 years of trust. Was it all a lie? James felt a tightness in his chest, the familiar feeling of betrayal creeping in like poison, spreading through his veins. The laughter, the chemistry between Emma and Liam, it was undeniable, and with that, everything changed. His world, his marriage, it was all falling apart, piece by piece. The party was everything James had expected: loud, flashy, and filled with people who seemed to live in a world he didn't belong to. Emma, with her radiant smile and effortless charm, had immediately disappeared into the crowd. She was in her element, the life of the party, and James found himself on the periphery, quietly observing. It wasn't that he didn't like people, but large gatherings made him uneasy. He preferred the quiet comfort of home, the intimacy of a good conversation over dinner, or the simplicity of a movie night. Emma, on the other hand, thrived in these settings. She was always the center of attention, surrounded by friends, colleagues, and strangers alike, all drawn to her infectious personality. James had never minded. He loved her for it, even admired her. But tonight, something felt different. As Emma slipped further into the party, leaving him alone at the edges, he couldn't shake the nagging feeling in his chest. She had always been sociable, but lately there had been a distance between them. Small signs. Late nights at work, unexplained absences, little things that didn't add up but were easy to ignore when you trusted someone. He had never questioned her loyalty before. He loved her deeply, and she loved him, or so he had thought. But tonight the unease in his gut grew stronger. He tried calling her a few times to check in, but each time the call went unanswered. He told himself not to overthink it. She was just busy, enjoying herself. But as the minutes ticked by, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The clinking of glasses, the laughter echoing in the background, and the constant movement of people felt almost suffocating to him. He excused himself from the party, stepping outside onto the balcony to get a breath of fresh air, hoping the cool night air would calm his nerves. But as soon as he stepped outside, he saw it. The flickering lights of the hot tub drawing him in like a magnet. He hadn't planned on going there, but something inside him urged him to check. He never expected what he would find. As the scene in the hot tub unfolded before him, James stood frozen, his heart sinking with each passing second. The anger, the confusion, the pain, it all surged within him, but at the same time, something else stirred in his chest. It was a deep, unsettling sadness. He could hardly breathe, but his mind was racing through the past 6 years. Every memory, every moment he had shared with Emma seemed to flash before his eyes. When they first met, Emma had been a whirlwind, effervescent, magnetic, with a smile that could light up a room. He remembered their first date, how easy it was to talk to her, how quickly they'd connected. She had such a presence, a way of making everything feel alive. She had swept him off his feet, and he had fallen for her instantly. Back then, it felt like they were two halves of a whole, a perfect match. She was everything he wasn't: outgoing, bold, full of life. And he, the quiet observer, was drawn to her energy. Over time, they had built something together. Their life felt like a partnership, even if Emma was always the center of attention at social gatherings. He'd always admired how she could work a room, make friends with ease, charm even the most distant of acquaintances. But it was more than that. It was how she had made him feel like the luckiest man alive, as if he had something that no one else could touch. They shared their dreams of traveling the world, raising kids together, building a future. Those conversations felt so real, so certain. It was the life they'd always imagined, and he believed every word. But somewhere along the way, things had started to shift. James couldn't pinpoint when exactly the distance started to grow. It was subtle at first: late nights at work, moments where Emma seemed distracted, her attention wandering elsewhere. He'd noticed the changes but brushed them aside. She was just busy, he told himself. But now, standing outside the hot tub, watching her with Liam, he couldn't ignore the truth anymore. The cracks in their relationship had been there for a while, and he had been too blind to see them. It hurt him to think that all those years, all that love, could have been built on a lie. Emma had once been the center of his universe. But now she was just a stranger, someone who had betrayed him in the most intimate way possible. His heart ached for the woman he thought he knew, but the realization was clear: the Emma he loved was gone, replaced by someone he didn't recognize. And it was too late to go back now. James could feel the blood rushing to his head, his thoughts scattered, as if his brain was struggling to make sense of the sight before him. His fingers trembled, but he couldn't stop recording. He didn't know why he was doing it. Perhaps it was for proof, perhaps for closure, but all he knew was that he couldn't look away. Emma was laughing, her head thrown back in carefree delight. She looked so beautiful, so alive in Liam's arms, and it felt like a punch to the gut. The way she moved, the way her body pressed against his each moment, felt like another shard of glass cutting through his chest. James had always been the patient type, the one who didn't jump to conclusions. But now, standing there in the shadows, the reality of the situation couldn't be ignored. His wife, the woman he had pledged his life to, was in the arms of another man, sharing a kiss, a touch, a connection that should have been his. And the worst part was that she didn't even notice him. She didn't know he was there, watching her, capturing this painful moment on his phone. Each laugh from Emma felt like a betrayal, each touch between her and Liam, a painful reminder of how far they had drifted apart. James had always been a quiet man, not one for confrontation, but now he felt a deep surge of anger. He had trusted her. He had believed in her. And yet here she was, completely disregarding that trust. He could hear his own breath in his ears, could feel the weight of the situation sinking in. He wanted to scream, to confront them both, to make them aware of how deeply he was hurt. But instead, he just stood there, paralyzed by the pain. It was a deep, gut-wrenching agony he hadn't expected. This wasn't a simple misunderstanding. It wasn't just a one-time mistake. This was a deliberate act of betrayal, a choice that Emma had made time and time again. The world around James seemed to blur as his emotions swirled in a storm of disbelief, anger, and sorrow. He had loved this woman. He had built a life with her. And now, all of that was unraveling in front of him. What had he missed? How could he have been so blind? The questions flooded his mind, but the answer was clear: she had made her choice, and now there was no turning back. After the moment in the hot tub, James didn't know what to do with himself. He was numb, his body stiff, his hands still trembling as he turned off the recording on his phone. The anger had subsided into an aching emptiness, replaced by the weight of confusion and hurt. What did this mean? What was he supposed to do now? He had never been one for confrontation, and this situation felt beyond anything he had ever prepared for. The logical part of his mind urged him to leave, to walk away, to get out of the toxic environment that this party had turned into. But the emotional part of him, the part that still cared for Emma despite everything, urged him to speak to her, to get some answers. He stepped into the living room, the chatter and music from the party still echoing in the background, and called Emma's phone. It rang a few times before she answered, and her voice, light and cheerful as ever, hit him like a slap in the face. "Hey babe, you all right? You disappeared for a while. You miss me?" she asked, completely unaware of the storm that was brewing in James' heart. The words were so casual, so carefree, that they almost sounded foreign to him now. How could she sound so normal, so unbothered? "Where are you, Emma?" James managed to say, his voice coming out in a strained whisper. "I'm by the pool, just relaxing." "What's up?" she responded, her voice still full of energy and life. James felt his chest tighten. He could hear the noise in the background, the laughter, the sounds of people enjoying themselves, but it didn't matter. He was numb to it all. He felt like he was in a different world from the one Emma was in. "You need to come here right now," James said, his voice firm despite the tremor that ran through it. There was a dead silence on the other end of the line. For a moment he thought Emma might have heard the shift in his tone, might have sensed that something was wrong. "James, what's going on?" "You're acting weird," she said, her voice tinged with concern. But James wasn't ready to say it all yet. He wasn't ready to confront her about what he had seen, not just yet. Instead, he took a deep breath and muttered, "Just come here. We need to talk." And with that, the line went dead. The moments that followed felt like a blur. James couldn't focus. His mind was racing, trying to piece together everything that had happened, the image of Emma with Liam in the hot tub, her laughter, the way she had looked at him, the way she hadn't even noticed James standing there. He still couldn't believe it. The pain was sharp, but there was something else too. It was a deep, seething anger that burned beneath the surface, and it was only a matter of time before he confronted Emma. When Emma arrived in the living room, she had a smile on her face, like nothing had changed. Her eyes flicked over to James, and for a brief moment he could see the confusion in them. She seemed unsettled by his stern expression, by the way he stood so still, but she didn't know why. She walked toward him casually, her hand reaching for his, expecting him to smile back, expecting things to be normal again. But James didn't move. He just stood there, staring at her. And in that moment, Emma seemed to sense something was wrong. She stopped, her hand lingering in the air between them. The tension was palpable, thick enough to slice through with a knife. "James, what's going on?" "You're scaring me," she said softly, her voice faltering. James wanted to scream, wanted to confront her, but the words stuck in his throat. He knew he couldn't just yell at her. This wasn't about anger anymore, it was about betrayal. It was about the shattering of everything he had once believed. Without a word, James took out his phone and held it up, the recording still playing, the image of Emma and Liam in the hot tub on the screen. For a moment, Emma's eyes widened in shock. She looked at the screen, then back at James, and in that instant, the color drained from her face. She knew. She knew what he had seen. She opened her mouth to speak, but James cut her off, his voice low but steady. "I saw everything, Emma. I saw everything. How could you do this to me?" The words were like daggers, each one more painful than the last. Emma took a step back, her hands trembling. "James, it's not what it looks like," she began, her voice weak, but James couldn't listen to her excuses. The truth was already clear. "You're lying," he snapped, his heart breaking with every word. "Don't even try to deny it. I saw you with him. I saw how you looked at him, how you touched him. Don't pretend this wasn't deliberate." Emma opened her mouth to speak again, but the words didn't come. She could see the pain in James' eyes, the crushing weight of betrayal that had settled in his heart. She had nothing left to say. The room felt smaller, the air thicker as the weight of the truth sank in. Emma stood there, her body stiff, unable to form words, her mind racing to process what was happening. She had always been able to talk her way out of tough situations, to charm, to deflect. But this was different. There was no escaping the raw honesty in James' eyes, the pain and hurt that had overtaken him. She had no words that could undo what had already been done. James was shaking, but not with rage. It was more like the last remnants of the love he'd felt for her were leaving him, replaced with a cold, bitter reality. He had trusted Emma. He had believed in their marriage. He thought he knew who she was. But now, standing there, he realized just how little he knew about the woman he'd spent 6 years with. The silence hung between them for a moment before James finally spoke, his voice steady but broken. "I don't know who you are anymore." Emma, the words hit her like a punch in the gut, more painful than anything she had imagined. "I gave you everything, and this is how you repay me." Emma opened her mouth, but nothing came out. She had tried to justify her actions in her mind, but now, facing the man she had once promised everything to, it all felt so empty. She had always loved James in her own way, but love had gotten tangled up in something else, something selfish, something she hadn't been able to control. The pull of excitement of newness had clouded her judgment. "I don't know what to say," Emma whispered finally, her voice barely audible. But James wasn't interested in her words anymore. He had already heard enough. The damage was done. "I don't need you to say anything," he responded, his voice cold. He took a deep breath, as if trying to steady himself, but the ache in his chest was relentless. "I've seen enough. I've been patient, Emma. I've tried to be the husband you needed. But this is a betrayal I can't come back from." Emma's face crumpled as the full weight of his words hit her. She had never seen him like this before, so certain, so detached. It was as if everything she thought they had was slipping away in that very moment. James reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the envelope, placing it on the table between them with a finality that made Emma's stomach drop. He pushed it towards her. "This is for you, and for Liam. Divorce papers. I can't be with someone who chooses this path, and you'll need this too." He slid another document toward her, one that would send Emma into shock restraining orders against her and Liam. Emma looked at the papers, her hands trembling as she picked them up. She didn't speak. There was nothing left to say. She had betrayed him, and now the consequences were unfolding in front of her. It wasn't just the marriage that was ending, it was the trust, the connection, the love that had once bound them. James was closing the door on all of it, and Emma had no choice but to accept it. Emma stared at the papers in front of her, the words blurring before her eyes. She had imagined this moment many times, but never like this. She thought she could talk her way out of it, that maybe James would understand, that maybe there was still a chance for them to work things out. But seeing him now, seeing the man who had been her rock, the one who had loved her without question, looking at her with cold, empty eyes, made it clear that she was too far gone. The damage had already been done, and there was no turning back. Her chest tightened as the reality hit her like a wave. James had always been the steady one, the one who believed in them, in their future together. She had taken that for granted, let it slip through her fingers, and now it was over. "I'm sorry," she whispered. But the words felt weak and hollow, like they could never be enough. She could see the hurt in James' eyes, but she knew it didn't matter. The trust had been broken beyond repair. She had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. James didn't respond. He didn't need to. He had made his decision, and Emma knew it. The man she once knew, the man who had always been patient with her, had reached his breaking point. He was done. And that was something Emma couldn't undo. "Goodbye," Emma, James said, his voice emotionless. And with those two words, it was over. The marriage. The years they had spent together. The future they had dreamed of. It was all gone. Emma stood there, frozen, the weight of his words sinking in. She felt like she was sinking with them, drowning in the consequences of her actions. She had lost him, and there was nothing left but the echo of her own regret. As she turned to leave, James didn't stop her. He didn't even watch her go. He just sat there, the emptiness settling in around him. He knew it was for the best. It was the hardest thing he had ever done, but he had to do it. His marriage was over, and the life they once shared was nothing but a memory now. The days that followed felt like a blur for James. He didn't know how to navigate this new reality where Emma was no longer a part of his life. The home they had shared felt empty, as if all the warmth had been sucked out of it. Each room felt like a reminder of what had been lost, of the life they once had. It was hard to find his footing in a world where everything had been upended so suddenly. Friends and family reached out, offering support, but James found it difficult to talk about it. How could he explain to people that the woman he had trusted so completely, the woman he had built his life with, had betrayed him in such a profound way? It felt like a betrayal not just of their marriage, but of his entire identity. He had spent 6 years with Emma, believing they were partners, believing in their future. But now it was all gone. At times, he would find himself staring at the divorce papers, the restraining orders documents that once felt like a distant possibility, now a cold, hard reality in his hands. He would replay the moment over and over again in his head, the image of Emma with Liam in the hot tub, the emptiness in her eyes when he confronted her, the cold finality of the divorce. The pain, though still raw, had begun to fade into something else, something harder. It was a numbness, a strange sense of peace that he hadn't expected to feel so soon. In the days that followed, James started to rebuild. It wasn't easy, and there were moments when the hurt would creep back in, but he knew he couldn't stay stuck in the past. He began to rediscover parts of himself that had been buried beneath the weight of his marriage. He spent time with friends, began working on projects he had neglected, and even started therapy to work through the emotional fallout. Slowly but surely, he started to feel like himself again, like the man he had been before Emma had become such an integral part of his life. It wasn't about revenge anymore. The anger he had once felt had started to dissipate, leaving behind a sense of clarity. What had happened with Emma was a chapter of his life, one he had no control over. What mattered now was how he moved forward. The future was uncertain, but James knew one thing for sure: he wouldn't let this define him. He was stronger than this. He had to be. The camera clicked on, and James sat before it, his face a mixture of weariness and resolve. He had debated for days whether to share his story, whether to expose the details of his private life to an audience he didn't know. But in the end, he knew it was important not just for his own healing, but for anyone else who might be going through something similar. "Hey everyone," James began, his voice quiet but steady. "I'm not sure how to start this, but I want to share something personal with you. Something I never thought I'd have to face. 6 years of my life, 6 years of marriage. All of it came crashing down in one night. Emma, the woman I trusted more than anyone, betrayed me in a way that I can't even put into words. And that betrayal led me to make some really tough decisions that have changed my life forever." He paused, taking a deep breath as he looked into the camera. "I know a lot of you might be wondering why I'm sharing this. The truth is, I think a lot of people go through situations like this, but we don't talk about it. We hide our pain, we bury it. And we try to move on without really dealing with what happened. But that's not healthy. You can't just move on like nothing happened. You have to face it. You have to take control of your life again, even when it feels impossible." James' voice grew firmer as he continued. "I'm here to tell you that you can get through this. It won't be easy, but you'll get through it. It doesn't matter how badly someone betrays you, it's your life, your future. You have the power to choose how you move forward. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Don't let anyone's actions define your worth. You are stronger than you know. And even though the hurt might never fully go away, you can heal. You will heal." He looked down at the camera, his expression softening as he gave a small, sad smile. "Thanks for watching. I know this video wasn't easy to make, and I'm sure it wasn't easy to watch either. But if it helps even one person out there, then it was worth it. If you're going through something similar, I want you to know that you're not alone. It's okay to feel hurt, to feel lost. Just remember, you don't have to stay there. Take the steps you need to take. You deserve peace. You deserve happiness." Please like, share, comment, and subscribe if you feel like this could help someone else. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other. I'll see you in the next video. As he clicked the camera off, James let out a sigh. The message had been important, not just for his audience, but for him as well. It was another step in moving forward, in reclaiming his life. And though the journey was far from over, he knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter.